Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
It's that time again. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. Today is May 28th, 2018, and we are starting episode 6. On this episode, we will be continuing our discussion about the Well of Ascension, the second book in Brandon Sanderson's original Mistborn series. If you didn't know, we have a live chat running while we record each episode. Every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. If you want to join in the discussion, we'd love to have you join us during the live stream at www.twitch.tv/innkeeperstable. The show is directly supported by our listeners via Patreon. Visit our Patreon page at www.patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. And in addition to helping the show, patrons get bonus content like our 6-7, a collection of 7 pieces of content that we find as we browse the internet and want to share with our listeners, as well as early access to any bonus episodes. Patrons will also be invited to our Discord channel, where you can continue the discussion about the Cosmere and our show and directly interact with the host and each other. I'm Bill, and as always, I am joined by amazing co-hosts Jordan and Amy. Hey guys, what have y'all been up to?
You go first.
Oh, I had a hot dog today, 2 in fact, because it's Memorial Day and it's my right as an American.
I was down in the same city as them, and I didn't visit them today, but I was eating a hamburger and my children ate hot dogs, so that was fun times.
Apparently, I'm a horrible, horrible patriot because I'm eating a taquito. So, but I did go see Solo, which is Star Wars, which is as American as they come. Galaxy Far, Far Away, nothing. That's America. America.
Anyway.
My voice isn't deep enough for that.
So yeah, like I said, last time we talked about a whole bunch of stuff in the Well of Ascension, barely scratched the surface. So this week we're going to continue that discussion and hopefully, try and make our way through. I'm hoping we can get through the rest of everything this week. Otherwise, are we doing 3 episodes, or are we just moving on?
I don't know.
I'm hoping to move on to the Hero of Ages next time, because that's just a really good book, and I'm excited. Plus, we've got so much content to cover.
Yeah.
Because, as we've mentioned before, at the beginning, what we're basically doing is we're going through each book and giving sort of an overview, discussing talking points that we liked about the book, the characters, the world building, etc. And then once we've gotten through all of the books, which is a lot of books, because thank you, Brandon, such mixed feelings, because it's a lot for us to get through, but it's so rich.
So good.
And so, but, so once we get through that, we're going to start diving a little bit deeper into what makes up the Cosmere, what keeps everything ticking, and stuff like that. And, of course, throwing out some crazy theories ourselves. As opportunity arises, of course, we're happy to answer questions that people send in, discuss theories that you have. So please email us at cosmerestudies@gmail.com. But for the moment, let's just jump on in. Amy, I think you had a topic you wanted to start with. You remember?
Your eyes going back and forth are most reassuring.
Indeed.
I know. I'm sure there were things I wanted to talk about, but I guess one little thing that I see from our show notes is Phelan Frandu. I can't say
Phelan
his name.
Frando.
Whatever his name is. Anyway, I remember last time I kept thinking that he was ska, and you guys are like, no, he's not a ska. And I realized in my
No, I said he was a ska.
Yeah, he is a ska.
I could have sworn that we agreed that he wasn't. Like, he was part of the merchant class, and there was also the ska group as well.
The merchants are ska. It's just that they've sort of become the middle class.
The merchants are actually a combination of ska and lower.
Okay, because I came
Phelan
away from
himself was a ska.
I came away from that chat thinking that I was wrong in that, and that he wasn't Ska. And I'm rereading his little lines at the beginning. He is really insistent that he is not a Ska. And I'm sitting there going, oh, you're totally a Ska. The fact that you're so insistent that you're not means that you are. So I feel vindicated in that.
The
I know,
twerp does protest too much, methinks.
Mm-hmm. So that's... there's probably something else I want to talk about, but I can't remember at the moment. So
I want to talk about Phylan. It's just amazing because he's actually pretty despicable. Because the fact that he's willing to sell out the entirety of the Ska for the sake of himself to one of the more entertaining people in the series and set. So, but anyway, just the fact he's willing to do that, it just makes him. Anytime you're willing to sell someone into slavery, bad call. Yet he's somehow still only the second most despicable person in the book.
We'll
and
talk
that's
about
impressive.
Him next.
That says something right there.
Yeah, when you can say at least he's not Straff. But we'll talk about Straff in a minute. So Phylan.
Yeah.
He was such a weird little character because he pops up, you instantly hate him.
Yeah.
He never shows any sort of redeeming quality, and then halfway through the book, he just disappears.
He's just gone.
It's just suddenly he doesn't matter anymore.
He sold himself out. He doesn't matter anymore.
He's quite figuratively and literally a tool, and so because and I do mean it in the sense that Brandon used him to do a couple things, and Brandon's when he picks someone to have just one or two quick viewpoints in. They're typically, they have to serve multiple functions. One is to showcase that, hey, there is this sort of middle class that's been formed by Ellen's society. And it's, it's very much, these are the people who figured out how to work both sides of the fence early on, and now they're the ones who are really benefiting from the new society. So It shows that. It shows the contempt that people have for Ellen and view him as sort of just a guy who got lucky as opposed to someone who's actually useful. And he also is the one who lets us see into what's going on with Set just a little bit, because we see, before we know Set's in there, we get to see his viewpoint, knowing he's the one who snuck him in.
To be fair, it also is a viewpoint from outside the crew.
Yeah.
Which we haven't really had.
Yeah, because other than Zane, it's all from the crew's perspective, I think.
And Straff. Yeah. We get a Straff viewpoint.
Oh, that's right, we do get a couple.
Yeah.
And it just solidifies how despicable he is.
Ugh.
Oh, what a...
So should we talk about Straff? Because there's not much to say about Phylan other than, we don't like you, you little weasel, go away.
Well, we talked a lot about Straff last time, I think. But more his plotting isn't what we were able to get into. And this is what I found interesting, because the dynamic between him and Ellen was as much a father-son dynamic as it was, political adversaries.
Oh, absolutely.
And Ellen's experience with his father and his father's experience with Ellen caused both of them earlier on to make severe missteps politically.
To underestimate each other.
Yeah, and it wasn't until Vin put the fear of God into Straff that their dynamic really actually started becoming one of adversarial nature. Because before they were at odds, but they didn't view each other as a threat, because Ellen viewed him as a threat, but not as a threat to him, as a threat to the kingdom he built. Because Ellen didn't care too much. But I do think seeing how Straff was belittling Vin changed their relationship some.
Yes.
Yeah,
because suddenly he's not just attacking Ellen. He is Vin is his butt. Ellen is a pretty even-minded guy. Vin is the one thing that it just sort of he becomes super protective of, and so.
Yeah, there's also a scene with Tyndall after they get back from Straff, and she's sitting here going, you need to sort out what's going on with you and Ben. And he's sitting here going, well, you back off right away. He gets really defensive right off the bat. And she's like, okay, that means you really like her then. She's like, that's what I needed to know. That the instant I begin to hint at slighting Vin, he gets defensive. And she's like, all right, that means you really like her. That means it's worth
Yeah, it's not
Continuing to
just a
pursue it.
dalliance.
Yeah.
Given the number of kids she has, I doubt that they're going to be able to get much past her in those
Oh yeah.
in those terms.
Hmm.
But okay, so with Straff though, I do find it interesting just seeing the way his mind works because we do get a viewpoint from him.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, there is nothing redeeming about him.
No.
But it's interesting watching the way that Zane just plays him like a fiddle.
Hmm.
Because Straff is used to being the smartest person in the room. And when he gets played, he doesn't even want to admit. He's not willing to admit that he could be. And so he doesn't suspect that he is.
Hmm.
And so...
Well, I think part of it is he's a nobleman's noble. He plays the game in the most amoral way possible, which the nobles, like, a lot of them don't like it, but they respect it because they understand it. It makes sense to them. The problem for Straff is legitimately very smart. He's legitimately very clever. But I remember there's a Mark Twain quote. It's something like I think it goes like, it ain't what you don't know that gets you. It's dang it. Basically, it's what you don't know.
It's what you know for sure. It's what you know for certain that just ain't so.
Yeah, there we go. I couldn't get it quite in the correct order, but yeah, and that's Straff's problem because he has a couple of very key misunderstandings of the situation. And one is he thinks Zane is addicted to adium, and because he doesn't understand how adium works. And I do think that's kind of interesting that he thinks he's addicted to adium, because we do know he's a tin eye, and we do see him burn it a lot. I'm wondering if on some level he is a savant and is somewhat addicted to his own metal.
Well, not only that, there's, of course, what Zane ends up doing to him.
Oh, yeah.
Is getting him addicted to what he thinks is a cure. And so when he starts developing withdrawal symptoms, he thinks, oh, I've been poisoned. And so...
And Zane doesn't have to do anything other than just kind of look there and go, yeah, you caught me now. You caught me.
Look, you got me. Yep.
But notice that's the exact same move Vin and Ellen pulled on Straff. They purposefully have Vin push a bit too hard on his emotions, so that
make it seem like he's...
Yeah, so he feels like, oh yes, I can tell when she's pushing.
That was actually all done by Vin. I didn't think they talked about that before.
Yeah, that was absolutely Vin. Ellen didn't realize it until partway through, and he's just like,
yeah,
wait
but,
a second,
on purpose.
But the point is, he does, like, Ellen does realize it, and brings it to his attention.
Okay,
and Zane does the same thing. He has something, makes him think he knows what's going on, and gets him to make that mistake.
He plays on his pride, is what he does. One of the things that I do like, though, is, or rather that I find interesting, is that with all of this poisoning and addicting Straff venture, that's not what kills him.
Nope.
What kills him is the most satisfying kill maybe in all of Brandon's books.
It's so gruesome, but...
It's wonderful. I'm still sorry for one character in that interaction.
The horse?
The poor horse.
No, I've had a discussion. The horse was probably like the worst horse in the world.
It was an evil horse.
Like if we got a viewpoint of the horse, it kicked someone clearly. Straff would want only the most evil of purebreds.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with purebreds.
Exactly.
But he wanted an evil one. It's like there's nothing wrong with noblemen.
But
there are evil ones. Exactly.
Yeah.
There are good ones. There are very good horses.
But
this one was clearly...
The point that Bill pointed out to me, because first of all, there's the fact that Vin, Alumin pushes, and she's got a Koloss sword, which they describe as the square-shaped... It's more of a wedge. It's more of a wedge than a sword. And he's just like looking up, he's like, they firing arrows? No, this is too far. No, that's not what it is. It's not, no, it's not quite that. It's oh no!
Yeah, it's like when you watch a movie and they just have that oh no look.
Well, the way he gets fascinated by the object, I do wonder if on some level Vin was just lightly tugging on his emotions just to get, just like, let's just riot a bit of curiosity. Stay right there.
Well, no, he's also high too.
Oh my goodness, he's so high.
That's right.
He has some stimulants. I'm just
That's
looking
right.
at here.
Well, because
He's getting over his addiction.
Right.
Well, except at that point, hadn't he sort of been like, oh man, this isn't so bad. In fact, this thing can maybe help me wake up in the morning and focus more. And it's like, oh my goodness, you're a crack addict in the 80s working on the stock market.
Yep, he just needs a little boost in the morning.
Just a little wake-up juice. Got a long day of murdering ahead of me.
Yeah.
Murder and misogyny.
Oh my goodness. Oh,
Being a
that's just
horrible
wonderful.
representation of humanity.
Then again, we sort of gloss over, yeah, Vin kills him with the Koloss sword. Oh yeah, there was an entire siege on the city.
Yeah,
And
that was going on too.
And maybe we should go back to Jastes and start talking about him.
Oh gosh.
Oh.
Speaking of, okay,
That poor guy.
Justice is more of a tragic story, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, he's horribly bald at a very young age.
He's got like
Just to
Homer hair,
remind,
Homer
just
Simpson.
to remind listeners, Jastes Lacal was one of Ellen's friends who he would sit around and have his little revolutionaries meetings. But in Jastes' mind, and in most of Ellen's friends' minds, this was more of a, this is our fun little way to rebel, but we're not going to do anything. This is just sort of our
rebellious moment.
rebellious moment, but then we're just going to join the system. And to Ellen, Ellen, of course, is 100%. What's the word I'm looking for? Not honest.
Committed?
Yeah. What's the word?
Genuine?
Genuine in what he wants to happen, and so he thinks that his friends are on the same side.
Well, and at first Justice was, because he says he enacted all the same things.
Yes. But then, after the Lord Ruler fell, Justice went back. Justice's family fled Luthadel,
Mhm.
and bad things happened to nobles all across the entire.
Well, because
Yeah.
his whole face down with Elend, as he says, is like, I enacted everything you said, and they took advantage of us, they destroyed us, and it sort of goes with one of, I think, Brandon's themes of this book and the next one, which is, like, your ideals are all well and good, but you have to have the right system for the right people at the right time. And so while Elend can get it to work with Luthadel, with the crew there to help him, with the noblemen and merchants,
With the Church of the
As-
Survivor.
yeah,
As king.
yeah, he can do that, but
Well, and even Ellen had problems.
yeah, and it's
So-
just one of those things that it wasn't the right solution at the right time, and it sort of cautions against the one size fits all concept of governance, and the fact that maybe you should take factors into consideration.
Well, the other thing is that, the first book is essentially how to host a revolution. This book is what happens after the revolution. What
How you
happens
keep
after
from
happily
crumbling.
happily ever after.
Mm-hmm.
Are y'all familiar at all with the play The Fantastics?
Nope.
Okay, the concept of that play is Act 1 is in the moonlight, and it's all the romance, and the boy and the girl fall in love, and the second act is in the daylight, and it's basically what happens after, the music rises and they kiss and all that stuff. It's what happens when real life ensues.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of what this book is largely about. Is, you've overthrown an empire. Now what? How do you?
Now you got to run it now.
Mm-hmm. And
People
there
still need
there
food.
is- I mean, in the game Civilization, anytime you change your system of government, there's a period of unrest, and so you got to know how you're going to handle it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's just the fact that he decides to go with the Koloss army just sort of shows that how far he has come unglued.
How desperate he's become,
Yeah,
because he actually believes, I can control them with these little wooden coins, because they want to be human.
boy,
Which-
and that's the freaky part where they start talking to everyone. It's like, we're going to kill you, then we will become you. And it's just like,
Yeah.
This. I'm glad we're using these tools. This is going to end well.
This is a great plan.
And this is a discussion that largely will make a lot more sense after we talk about the next book.
Yeah.
Just because we're going to talk about where the Koloss came from and what they are. But that's sort of a big reveal for book 3, so we'll save that for later. But I do want to talk about something that Brandon does. He follows sort of a pattern in each of these 3 books where he has a character that's sort of the other character, the mysterious character from a different culture, and he uses those characters to prove the rule through the exception. In the first book, it was Sazed. We knew nothing about the Terrace people. And Sazed was sort of this mysterious figure who wasn't like the other Terrace men, but we learned so much about Terrace culture through him by looking at how he is not, how he's behaving that he shouldn't be. So in the first book, we have Sazed. In this book, we have Tensoon, who follows that, who fills that role. Because we start to learn about the Khandra. We start to learn about where
they came from a little bit, and a little bit about their culture and things.
And at the same time, we start getting viewpoints from Sazed, or Sazed, or however you pronounce his name. I say both.
So
do not expect any consistency from me on the pronunciation of his name, because I say both. But we start learning a lot more about Sazed because we see his internal monologue. We see his interactions with Tindwyl, who's
Marsh. Yeah.
Well, I was talking more about Tindwyl, so we start seeing more of the Terrace.
Yeah.
And then in book 3, of course, we're going to start getting some perspective chapters from Tensoon, and they introduce a Koloss that we just sort of see and start to learn a little bit about them. But we'll discuss that more in detail during the next.
So the thing I found interesting about Tensoon, first of all, obviously there's the whole mystery where we all think he's Orsur.
Oh, gosh.
And
I was so proud of myself for spotting it this time.
Good.
I was like, oh, that's where it happens. That's where the switch happens.
Yeah. What's interesting is it's the fact that no one knows anything about the Khandra that makes the ploy work so perfectly. And the fact that they have to obey because of the contract. And so he does this thing that to Khandra is an abomination because he killed another Khandra. But at the same time, he was told, you have to obey the contract. And Tensoon was so obedient that he was willing to kill another Khandra rather than break his contract.
Does it remind either of you of Asimov's 3 Rules of Robotics, or 3 Laws of Robotics?
A little bit, but I've only watched the movie. I haven't ever read.
Okay. The contract sort of reminds me of that, because first is they always have to obey a human.
Yeah.
Second is they can't do harm to a human unless it
protects them, or
unless it violates the first law. No.
Oh, yes,
first is they can't harm a human. Second is they have to obey all humans
unless it violates the first law.
And third is they have to protect themselves unless it violates either of the first 2. And so it just the contract sort of reminds me of those same.
Okay, I found the list. Khandra will not kill men. Khandra will only assimilate bones when commanded. Khandra will serve their masters with absolute obedience, except in following the following instances: if they're commanded to kill a man, or if they're commanded to reveal secrets about the Khandra, such as the nature of the flaw. And Khandra will remain in the homeland when they're not on a contract.
They have 2 years or something.
So even if he was commanded to harm a human, he couldn't do it.
But he almost pushes that rule once.
Well, he's put in this impossible situation. And
I thought he hurt somebody to help defend Vin once.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is he starts
developing a loyalty to Vin.
And that's like, she gets me. She's a much better person than a lot of the people I've met, and she understands a lot.
And I love it because they hate each other.
Yeah.
So speaking of the whole concept, the contract of Chandra will stay in the homeland when they're not on a contract.
Mhm.
So I was listening to an interview or a Q&A session with Brandon
I started to listen to it and then I didn't finish it yet.
from JordanCon, and there was a question that somebody asked, where there's apparently a Chandra in Oathbringer.
What?
They asked, "Did we see this Chandra?" Because there is a World Hopper Chandra. He's mentioned that before, and somebody said, "Did we see this Chandra on screen in Oathbringer?" And his response was, "Yes, she gets around." There's really only one female Chandra that we've discussed quite a bit.
Yeah, Milan.
And so
I have to. I have to reread Hero of Ages again.
and again,
That's
she,
interesting.
that's not until Hero of Ages.
But anyway, but yeah,
so it's one of those things. There's a Chandra on Roshar. What are you doing?
but I love the fact that they hate each other for very specific and it's what's interesting. The reasons are specific but petty for both of them. She hates him for eating Kelsier
Which, especially because he didn't.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
But I think Tensoon is like understanding enough where he might as well have. He doesn't like.
Right.
It's just the fact that he was, they're ordered to. They have to stick to the contract. And Kelsier himself said it was okay, but she's still bitter about it because the only person who could have stopped Kelsier was Orsur, and Orsur didn't. And she can't let that go.
The other thing that's interesting about Tensoon, I feel like Tensoon is a good example of a lawful good character. Because he actually does break the contract. But then he immediately returns to the homeland to take his punishment. And so he wasn't lawful stupid. He was lawful good. He did what he needed to do, but then he followed through with the contract. And I was just, that's very rarely done well. And I think Brandon did a great job with it in this instance.
And I thought there was a cute little scene where the crew is all having a discussion and Tensoon is sitting next to her chair and she starts petting his ears. And he's like, I don't know how to feel about this. And she's like, oh, sorry, didn't mean to touch your head.
And he's just like, it actually didn't feel bad, but it was just weird.
Yeah, considering how much Rosie likes having her ears rubbed, I can see it being a great sensation for him to be like, this feels good, but it shouldn't, and why are you touching me?
Let's talk about that, actually. First off, the fact that she asked him to become this wolfhound. Like, that in and of itself, I think, because his immediate response is disgust.
No.
It's literally dehumanizing.
Yeah. Not that he is human, but he's always been probably doing human facades.
Well, and as we see in the next book, they all still wear these human-like bodies.
But then later on, she offers him the opportunity to shift, and he's like,
it's a lot of work.
I see the advantage of using this. So for now, we'll keep. He starts to recognize that she wasn't doing it as a slight.
He also makes the excuse that or it seems like an excuse where he's like, it's a lot of work to change a body. Just kind of like, I don't want to have to do it.
Even though he's proven it ain't hard for him to do it at all.
Oh no, he can do it.
Oh no, he's a master.
Actually, I just want to. Vin killed that poor dog, but at the same time, the scene where she gets the dog is awesome.
They're like, here's a puppy, and she's like, I need that thing.
And he's like, no, that's like the biggest, meanest thing in the world. And then she goes and just punches it.
That's right.
And I was like, oh, she just smacked it.
Vin knows how to assert herself.
Yeah, not only that, not only did she get an amazing tool in that instance, but she also built her reputation. It's the whole prison yard scene where you pick the biggest, baddest guy and then you beat him down and suddenly you're the king. And
nobody messes with you anymore.
No, but it's really the other thing that's interesting about that, because wasn't she sort of trying to avoid like the public square because they keep asking her, like, And she's
what do
like,
we do
no,
now?
I'm not.
She's like, I don't want to be in the public eye. I don't want any part of this.
Well, and it kind of lends to the realness between, like, where she did seriously consider leaving with Zane, because it's sort of a thing in the reread that I sort of read it, I think, more correctly than I did the first time, where it was never about that she was like truly attracted to Zane.
She was attracted to what he represented.
Yeah, which was, I get, because Kelsier taught her so much, but by giving her friends, he gave her responsibility. She was used to just leaving and never getting attached with Reen because you weren't, like, they weren't safe if they were doing that. And so now she has responsibility, and that's terrifying. And
yep, I can confirm that.
Yeah, well, and I can just see her as well, just being sort of like, man, I didn't mean to. I didn't want a religion. I didn't want to become a religious figure. I don't want these people worshiping me just simply because Kelsier trained me. Especially when I know how horribly flawed Kelsier was.
Right.
I found it interesting when she found the Church of the Survivor by following Demu.
Oh, goodness. And speaking of somebody who doesn't want to be an heir, and then you suddenly realize you're not just an heir, you're essentially considered a prophet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, the fact that she didn't want to be an heir, I find that interesting because in book 1, that was kind of Ellen. You know, he didn't want to be his father's heir. He didn't want to be head of House Venture. He had no interest in that. And then suddenly he starts to accept that. He becomes the king. And Vin has her moment. And then we get to, book 3 where both of them have kind of accepted, okay, this is who I am, bring it on.
Well, and it's a continuation of her plot from book 1 where she's like, am I Lady Valette? Am I Vin? Like, who am I? And she sort of learns to find a middle ground between those two. This book, I felt, was almost sort of like she's trying to figure out between her two role models growing up, which were Reen and Kelsier. And point in fact, when she fights Zane, I actually sort of like to think the way she beat Zane was a mixture of the two men's lessons, because from Reen she learned the art of the con and how to become weak. When she beat Alariel, she learned how to play weakness and get someone who is stronger than her to overplay their hand, and she ends up killing her with what little ADM she had left. This fight against decidedly more skilled fighter who has ADM and she doesn't, she still wins,
and who is also working with Team Allergy. With a boosted pushing ability.
But she's able to win because she suckers him into going for the kill. But from Kelsier and Reen, she learned the art of the con, and learned.
She figured out how to play the system.
Yeah, and as someone who likes physics, I love that if you can see the future, you can change it, even if it's brief enough that you can get some information from it. Sort of like trying to get information from background noise. And she pulls off this really incredible, really clever thing, but it required the skills that Kelsier gave her and the...
That's
Jordan,
not good.
you're frozen.
Oh, he's unfrozen now.
No. Did you hear me?
We missed what you said.
Oh,
you froze for a sec.
Oh, okay. We see the from Kelsier, she has the skills that she was trained for, but from Reen, she got the proper way to think.
The instincts.
Yeah, because I don't think Kelsier could have figured that one out, because I think Kelsier thinks too directly in a fight. And she's constantly looking for a different angle and how not to fight fair.
Right.
Because she's smaller, she has to use that advantage.
Exactly. So she takes whatever advantage she can, because otherwise she's going to die.
Yeah.
And so...
Yeah, between this and the 3 horseshoes trick, she's just coming up with all sorts of fun things this book.
I thought it was 5 horseshoes.
I don't know. It was horseshoes.
It was a lot of horses with horseshoes. I don't know.
It was the horse's iron shot.
It all comes back to horseshoes, doesn't it?
They're fun.
They are fun.
Oh, man.
I guess we haven't talked about the Well of Ascension at all.
No, we haven't.
Wait, there actually is a Well of Ascension?
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so for that, we might want to talk a little bit about Quan.
Which for that we have to go back to the beginning of the
We should
book.
probably do about the metal rug. That would probably be the good segue.
Yeah, so we go back to the conventicle of Saren.
And we actually talk about Marsh.
Oh, Marsh. Okay, let's talk about Marsh. Because at the end of book 1, Marsh shows up and kind of saves the day.
Yeah, he even
Which is
gives the
also
Kelsier smile, which is how Vin figures out who he is.
That's right.
He
And
ain't
so,
smiling anymore.
So in book 1, Marsh is our unexpected hero. In book 2, Marsh is our unexpected villain.
Yeah.
Because
oh, boy.
we learn that Marsh doesn't have full control of his faculties.
Man, and on this reread, how he acts at the conventicle is so telling that he's a puppet on the end of strings.
In what way?
Well, it's because he leaves, says that, he's like, I'm going to go here, you go over there. Hint, hint,
He's like, you
wink,
go
wink,
look what
nudge,
you
nudge.
want.
And then, right as he finds it, and he's going to try and memorize it, he shows up, nope, just take a rubbing, take the rubbing.
He's like, no, we don't have time to stick around for that.
Come on, gotta move. And so he gets the rubbing, which is something Ruin can manipulate.
Well, if he put it into his copper mines, Ruin can manipulate that as well.
But the difference is, in order to put it into a copper bind, you do have to very temporarily memorize it. And there's a chance that after temporarily memorizing it, he pulls it out, he might have noticed that, wait a minute, this changed.
I don't know about that.
Hard.
But we find out that's how Quan knew things were going on.
Right, because he didn't put it into his metal mines.
Yes,
he actually
but,
had a
yes. But what I'm saying is, he put it into some level of memory first, whereas this time he gets a rubbing and looks at it later. So Ruin has full access to the entire thing without him ever even thinking about what it says.
But he does notice later that like a certain one line keeps getting ripped off.
Yeah.
Each copy of
Now
it.
that was
preservation.
That was preservation, if I remember right.
Is that-
Yeah, because he's trying to draw attention to the.
Oh, is that what it is?
The fact that the
Okay.
line is different.
Mm.
Well, and I think the line wasn't it the metal, like only trust things written in metal.
I don't think it was that one. I think it was
It
the
was,
line.
and then they
that-
cannot take the power.
yeah, she
so-
must not
Oh,
take the power.
that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, because while he can manipulate metal mines, he can't manipulate your actual memory. And so,
And I also thought it was interesting that when Sazed was going around the conventicle, he was speaking about what he saw and not just putting in the visual memories, because the visual memories corrupt really easily
well, and
compared to the spoken ones.
and it's also hard to transfer visual memories to people.
Mm-hmm.
Audio memories, you can recite to them, and they can remember the specific words that you've spoken.
Yeah, that entire
But-
scene, we learned a lot about how his Farukami works. 'Cause that's also the
Yeah.
same scene where we got his iron.
And the weight, yeah.
Right.
But no, so we see then Marsh just sort of leaves.
Right.
He just leaves in the middle of the night because Sazed wakes up and he's not there, and
Yeah.
he waits a couple hours. Then he's like, "All right, I guess I gotta go because he's not coming back."
No, and it's. I want to talk about Marsh more, but I don't want to go
Yeah.
into spoilers. So
Well, we'll have plenty of time to talk Marsh next book.
right, absolutely.
But
Okay, so the Well of Ascension itself, though. So they go on. Vin leaves the city with Ellen and
Spook.
Spook.
and
and
Alrienne, but she then leaves.
She goes like, "I'm gonna go ditch you over here to
Well,
go."
she didn't want to go up to. She just wanted out of the city.
Yeah, so that she could get back to her father and then say, "Nope, we're going to help."
You're gonna
But
help
the thing
Dad.
is, they were completely misled. They were sent to get them out of the city to be sort of the hope of the world after Luthor falls.
yeah.
But
And Spook knows that, but Elenda and Vin don't.
which really drives Spook's character in the next book. It's really interesting to see how that affects him moving forward.
This entire book really foreshadows the next book for Spook so well.
Especially because originally Spook wasn't going to be that important, and then suddenly book 3 is almost about Spook.
He's 1/3 of the book.
Yeah. But so, they're out and they're on their way because they're looking for the Well of Ascension. Vin's read about it. She knows that it's supposedly to the north in the Terrace Mountains.
Yet the thrummings that she's feeling are getting further away.
Mm-hmm. And so she goes...
Did you guys... My Twitch channel isn't showing up right. Is it showing up right for you guys?
Yeah, it's
okay.
showing fine for me.
All right. I guess it's just me.
No, it's not streaming.
Oh, it's not?
No, we just had a hiccup. But we're recording locally, so it's not an issue.
Yeah, that's true.
I just saw
Is it still streaming, though, or...?
It is. We're now back streaming.
We're streaming again? Okay.
Yep. Anyway.
So, they're off, and then Vin finds out... I forget, how does she discover what happens?
She realizes that the thrumming, it goes the other direction.
It's getting quieter. Okay,
it's getting quieter, and she's like, "Wait, it shouldn't be doing that."
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that's sort of interesting.
And I think Spook ends up admitting that they're running away from the city.
Yeah.
Too.
This is also the same time that as they're getting further and further away, that the Mist Spirit tries to kill Elend.
That's right.
Make it look like he's going to do it.
Yeah, and so she's like, "No, I need to do something more drastic." And you know what? Yeah. Good thing that they did too, because turns out the entirety of the Steel Ministry was up in Terrace Land. They were doing some murdering.
Okay, so
they probably were done with the murdering by that point, unfortunately.
So
no, they have a lot of murdering to do.
So on the way back, Vin takes off with the horseshoes and does her little.
That is a horseshoe trip. I mean, I think it goes 3 to 5. She does it with 3, and then she goes up to 5 or something.
Yeah, I think so.
So
basically, she does her midnight ride. She rides horseback without a horse, is what happens. And
which is crazy.
Well, it's because she knows she can't pewter drag her way there. That's not fast enough. And
right.
she's done that before. She doesn't like it.
It's not a pleasant experience.
No, it's horrible.
And so she takes... Well, plus she knows that when she gets back, she's going to have to fight anyway.
Yeah. Well, and this again shows the difference between her and Kelsier. Kelsier never bothered to figure out something like this, and Vin's all about working smarter.
Right. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so while she's off heading back to the place, Elend and Spook are walking back, and they were talking about what's going on in Terrace. They run into a group of refugees.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where, for those of you who are trying and just racking your brains trying to figure out where the heck Hoyd shows up in this book, this is where he shows up. It's very, very subtle.
I reread it just a little bit ago, and I was like, I didn't get any hint that it was him.
Even though I knew exactly where he was, I saw no clues whatsoever that it was him.
It's like one of those magic eye pictures you just can't see.
Well, the only thing that was even vaguely that was they said that he moved really well for a guy that acted like he was really old and weak. Right. And so that was the only thing that seemed a little bit weird. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and that doesn't give me this is Hoyd. So.
Yep. Although, but apparently Hoyd actually wasn't expecting to get caught up. And all Brandon has said is that while Hoyd was in Terrace, he got wrapped up in things he didn't expect to be involved in, and they dominated much of the time during the events of Mistborn Well of Ascension. No, he's not just hanging out. Yes, I know what he was doing. And so, essentially, with the Steel Ministry up there, he got tied up in a bunch of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so
if it turns out there was like a Hoyd versus all the Steel Inquisitors fight that we didn't get to see, I'm going to be pissed.
I want that story.
It makes you wonder, so all the Steel Inquisitors, it's claimed that they're dead, except for Marsh, right?
Yeah.
After the whole...
Well, all the ones that were in
Luthadel.
Oh, in Luthadel?
Yeah, because remember Marsh. Yeah, because Marsh dropped all the spikes just like a mic drop. I guess it was a spike drop. And
Because they were all napping and he killed them all.
Yeah, because the thing is, remember, the Koloss in the second book that are showing up in Marauding, they're being sent in by the Steel Inquisitors that are still around. So there are still a few alive.
Okay, guys, I was fuzzy on that, exactly how many are left. Because I'm like, if they're all dead, then how did they go and kill the terrorists?
It was a little unclear.
Well, and it's also implied they made a few more.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess, that's true.
And so... But yeah, so bad things happen, and essentially what happens is all of the keepers are killed. Which basically means that at that point, Sazed and Tendwell are the only two Feruchemists left.
Yeah, the full Feruchemists, yeah.
And so...
Well, and let's talk about...
Well, no, I mean, were all Feruchemists part of the Synod, though?
It was Sazed by the end of
the keepers are the Feruchemists.
Yeah. It was Sazed by the end of the book said that he thinks he's the only one left.
Yeah.
So even if he's not, he's the only one of any concern that is.
If you're confused about Era 2, just think about it as recessive traits showing up.
Yeah, because there were still...
I'm sitting there going, how did the population survive otherwise?
Well, there were still Terrace people, just not the full-blooded Feruchemists.
But just think of it as the people who weren't full-blooded Feruchemists.
The recessive and recessive joined together.
They carry the recessive gene, exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That makes me feel a little better. I'm just wondering, how does this work?
Yeah, because I got confused at first, but
biology, yay.
Yeah, because a Feruchemist or a non-Feruchemist and a non-Feruchemist can't have a Feruchemist child.
Yeah. But I wanted to talk about Sazed fighting in the city. Because for a man who says he's a scholar...
We talked about that last week.
We talked about that last week.
Did we?
Yeah, yes, we did. We talked about him hulking out.
Yes.
Man, I want to talk about it again.
It's funny. I have brown eyes, and my kids have blue eyes. My husband has blue eyes. Mm-hmm. And, none of my siblings have blue eyes. My mom doesn't have blue eyes. But she has, all of her siblings have blue or green eyes. And so it's funny that my kids have blue eyes. And then one of my brother's kids his three kids have blue eyes.
That's both of my mom's parents had dark brown hair. But there are 4 girls in my mom's family. My mom has brown hair. My aunt has black hair. Another sister has red hair and another is blonde. And the redheaded daughter has a million grandkids with fiery red hair. But none of her kids have red hair.
I have a sister-in-law with red hair, and none of her kids have red hair. She has 4 girls, and I'm like, oh man, I wanted a redhead, another pop up.
But can any of them store memories in metal?
Not that I
haven't checked.
Okay, well, get on that.
And so,
it's going to be useful.
I don't know if there's a copper deficiency or anything, but...
Yeah,
one thing I just want to say about Sazed when he is fighting... he actually is good at inspiring the guys around him just by the simple fact that he's just just fight, go, move, and just desperately saying it. They need some sort of direction because they saw their...
Well, and it's also sort of when you watch one of the Avengers movies, Hulk shows up and people feel better about their odds.
Yeah.
And so...
I'm with that guy. I have a chance now.
Exactly.
Yeah, but the other thing it shows is just... Because Brandon's talked about, how Mistborn are better if, you don't expect the fight or whatever. Mm-hmm. But if it's a Feruchemist who's been preparing, they win. And we sort of see why. Because this is Sazed fighting for, it sounds like, about 2 hours. Using up years and years of storing all in one go. Mm-hmm. And it's just so cool. And there's a whole scene at the end of it where he's finally drained everything he's done. Mm-hmm. And he looks at the sun and he's like, this is really beautiful. And it's there's a shadow up against it. And Vin's just I'm here for my cinematic entrance, everybody! And she flies out from the sun itself and just starts to go to freaking town.
Right. Well, that's because, yeah.
Well, because she goes in, and at that point she knows the trick with the Koloss and
can take care of that.
Yeah, because at first correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to remember this.
Yeah.
She fights first and then realizes, Tensud said something about them being similar, and then she tries the Duralium end.
That sounds right. That she fights for a little bit,
right.
and then she's like, wait a minute.
Again, Vin fights smarter, not harder.
Yep.
Okay, so speaking of, we were talking about Sazed. I want to take a little bit more look at his character and how he grows and changes throughout this one, because in the first one he's sort of the wise advisor, and he's going around and he's trying to convert everybody to every religion ever,
or to some religion that suits them best.
He is essentially the priest of every religion, to the point where he officiates in Vin and Ellen's wedding. He's not necessarily an ordained priest of this religion, but the religious ceremony is they have to make an oath of love to each other in front of
a
holy witness. Says that's pretty holy. I mean,
yeah, he's supposed to get there.
Yeah.
And so, but he also starts to look for his own. He finally starts to look for his own happiness with his relationship with Tindwyl.
And that's shattered.
But then, of course, when Tindwyl, spoiler alert. I mean, you're already here, but just when Tindwyl dies, it breaks him.
Oh yeah,
it absolutely breaks him, and suddenly you have this guy who is the priest of every religion, essentially, who starts to have a crisis of faith. And that continues into the next book, but it's absolutely fascinating to see how Brandon explores this. He's done that a few times. He did the same thing with Wraithen in Elantris. You have this holy man, who is one of the most devout of holy men, who has his own crisis of faith. And in the end, it comes to a more solid realization of what his actual faith is.
Well, the difference being Wraithen's is a debate in his mind of church versus religion, which anyone who's been in organized religion at some point, you're going to come to that conflict. Sazed's is coming from a very academic source, and frankly, I just to be honest, he's sort of flippant with, like, he's interested in it, but he doesn't view them as holy. He views them as important, but from an anthropological
that's true
angle. And so the thing is, he finds out that all of this doesn't really matter in his world because it didn't help save him. And the thing that breaks him with Tindwyl is he looks in his minds and he doesn't know if there's an afterlife, if he'll get to see her again.
Right.
And that's what breaks him, is that he knows every religion and he has no clue if any of it means anything.
Which is also interesting. Brandon, in interviews, has said, people are asking him about. He answered a question in a way that I found very interesting and very frustrating at the same time.
Sounds
because
like a word,
it's talking about how I'm going to take a brief dive into Secret History.
Okay.
Because so if you haven't read Secret History, there are slight spoilers ahead. 3, 2, 1, diving in. So in Secret History, when we see Kelsier's perspective after he dies, and other people show up in the cognitive realm for a time, and then they disappear into what is referred to as the beyond.
The upside down?
We don't know where they go and what happens. And Brandon has said, I am not going to answer that question. He said, I'm never going to answer that question. That is a question more for the philosophers in universe than it is for me. Because...
and point in fact, not only does Brandon not know, even after book 3, Sazed doesn't know. And he has the power. He has 1/8 of the power of Adonalsium itself.
Right.
And he doesn't know. So
But it's interesting because basically Brandon has said, I will leave that up to your own personal philosophy, because I don't want to make a definitive statement because if I do that, there's no way I'm going to be able to please everybody. So I'm just going to leave it open. And so he leaves it so open that even the deities of this universe don't know.
All right. And is this where we're closing Secret History?
Okay, yeah, we're going to close secret history here.
All right.
All right. So.
But Sazed has his crisis of conscience, but he still has more stuff to do because the Well of Ascension that problem hadn't been solved at that point.
Yeah, it's still going on.
Okay, so once they get down to where the well is,
Mhm.
there are a few really interesting things that we see in there. First off, they walk through basically a black mist. What's that about?
That's ruin.
And there's also, is this after going through the secret door? Or is it
Yes.
before?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's after.
Yeah, so basically they go through and they walk through a black mist. So let's talk a little bit about ruin and preservation. So we're going to start. We're going to sort of mix our spoiler Cosmere section with the book because there's a lot of direct interaction with it in this one.
Mhm.
So we're going to talk a little bit about the broader Cosmere moving forward. But so when they get down in, we see a black mist. So what are the mists? Do we like the original?
It's part of their body.
It's essentially part of their body. So one thing we've learned, especially clearly on Scadrial, is that each of the shards has 3 different physical manifestations. There's a solid, a liquid, and a gas. On Scadrial, we have ruin and preservation.
Mhm.
So preservation, we've seen all 3 manifestations. There's one is the mists are the gas. The Well of Ascension itself is filled with a metallic-looking liquid. And then the beads of Lerasium that they find.
Oh, that's right.
So when they get to the well, there are some clay pots that have been shattered, and then a single piece of metal lying on the ground. It looks like there have been others there before, and there's only one left. Now we know that Hoyd took one of those.
Mhm.
What are you doing, Hoyd?
He's doing all sorts of stuff. And so there was only one of them left. But then with Ruin, his 3 manifestations are this black mist that they walk through to get to the Well of Ascension. Then there's Adium, which is the solid form, which they burn to do time hacks. And the third one is actually there's a pool at the bottom of the pits of Hathsin.
Yeah.
That's just word of Brandon, essentially.
Oh, okay.
And we learn about stuff as well. So
that's also how Hoyd got to Scadrial through that. And so, but the thing that I wanted to talk about has just left my mind.
Well, so we have the 3 different versions. So they go down, they see the pots, they're like, okay, this is weird. And
I think, doesn't Elend pick one of them up? He picks up the metal bead or something, doesn't he?
not the start he doesn't, I don't think.
Okay.
I don't think so.
But that's when the Mist Spirit shows up and stabs him.
And stabs Elend. And so,
Yeah, and then Vin, because Vin didn't want to step into the shard pool because she sort of had an inkling of what it was.
she started thinking, okay, maybe there's something different here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and she goes in, she takes the power, she touches, a sliver of the infinite, and then gives it up, and then you just hear, I'm free. And you're just like, oh,
and it's just
good.
the most terrifying. I remember when that happened, my eyes just got huge, and I just thought, what just happened? And he doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, and it's just like, oh, so, I don't know what she let out. I doubt it's good and happy.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I was talking about, I remembered what I wanted to mention before. The metal pool that's at the bottom of the pits of Hathsin, if I remember correctly, that's actually the pool that they walked past at the bottom of the mountain when Alindi and Rashek were going up to the Well of Ascension 1,000 years ago.
Because we find out that the Lord Ruler moved everything.
Because that way it's harder to follow the map that's from the prophecy. Is you move everything, then you can't find it.
Right. And so,
Which I think Vin was the one who suggested. She's like, if he could do all the other stuff, then why wouldn't the Lord Ruler move stuff? And I'm like, oh, well, yeah, that would make sense. That
and
may not follow the same map.
And I think one of the things that made her realize that she had seen that room before, and she realized, wait, he brought everything that was his, that reminds him of who he was, there. Right. Why would he, a God King, let the most powerful thing, the tool that lets him be the God King,
right?
Why would he keep far away? That doesn't make sense. I wouldn't do that.
He would want to keep it under his stronghold.
Yeah, and then that's when she realizes, oh, we made a boo-boo.
Indeed.
And we forgot that on their way down, well, they were already, Elend and Vin were already down, but Sazed was trying to get there to stop Vin.
Right.
What?
And then she gets stopped by someone.
Yeah, but just one sec. I can't remember, why was Sazed suddenly aware? Did he see the Mist Spirit?
I'm going to check.
The Mist Spirit, I believe, kept pointing, gesturing to the document, didn't it?
Yeah, he's pointing at
is that where he finds the?
And then the torn piece shows up.
That's right. He finds the torn piece.
Yeah, so Sazed is holding the scrap of paper, the torn off piece, and then the spirit keeps pointing at it, and then he's like, "Well, you're gonna write what you want," and it just points, and then it points at the handwriting and back and forth between his and Tyndall's writing.
Yeah, and then we get
Marsh that gets him to realize. Yeah,
Marsh versus Sazed is so fun.
Well, because neither of them is a warrior. But both of them are a warrior.
They're super strong.
So
for people who don't fight, they fought a lot.
And it was kind of epic.
Oh, yeah. Just that. I love and it's like, you're no warrior. And it's like, I think,
I think are you.
And then the two go at it. And it's where we get sort of the thing that gets abused in Era 2, where changing your weight versus someone who can push is so strong. Because he shoots the rings at him, and then suddenly he's like, oh, tap weight, and Marsh goes flying.
And he has them stuck inside him, so Marsh can't mess with the metals anymore.
Yeah, right.
And I think what really gets him is that he's down, and Marsh seems to think that he's beaten, and he's like, wait, I have health right inside me, and just pulls it, and then he can fight again. That's when he does the line, neither I think are you. For the
fairy bottles. They're so useful.
Or Phoenix Down, or whatever that's called.
Well, the fairy bottles trigger automatically, though. So.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, I watch people game. I don't game very much.
Ah.
I get too nervous when I game. It's terrible. I get nervous and die.
But no, it is a really good fight. And I don't think anywhere other than there do we get a better view of Feruchemist versus Mistborn.
Well, and Marsh isn't technically Mistborn. He has
all the medals.
Does he have all of them?
Yeah, all the ones that are actually useful. He doesn't have Allomantic Gold, but what use is that? And at that point, I don't know if he has Duralumon, though we know he has it later.
Right.
But because at that point, that was a new discovery still. Or was it? Because that might have been one of the secrets the Lord Ruler had. I'm not sure on that one.
I can't remember.
But it's also the first hint of just exactly what Ruin can do.
Yeah.
We don't know Ruin by name, but we do know that something is controlling Marsh, because Marsh is not behaving like Marsh anymore.
Well, because not even just the fact that they're fighting, he's darker than Marsh normally is.
Well, and he apologizes before he starts fighting him. He's like, "I'm sorry," and then
he responds to the "neither I think are you" comment. He says, "You think that I that's the difference. Is this time that I've been gone, I've been killing." That's and he just the fact that he has these moments of lucidity and the weight of everything that he's done just weighing on him.
That'd be terrible.
Marsh is one of the most tragic but amazing characters to me. I love seeing his journey later on. But yeah.
Poor Marsh.
Okay, so
they get in the pool. She releases the power, and Elend is still bleeding out.
Right. And so...
And then the Mist Spirit points to the Lauracium.
Yeah,
which
that's
is interesting. And of course, she doesn't really trust the Mist Spirit because she just watched it stab Ellen.
But she then figures out why, though.
Because it wanted her to use the power to heal him.
Yeah, to take up
And
the
so-
power.
It's like, well, obviously, are we doing spoilers right now? Or for Secret History?
I think that we're just going to say, let's start our spoiler segment now. And
Okay,
at this
'cause-
point, anything beyond this point, there will be spoilers.
Okay, so spoilers. But it was really helpful to read a big chunk of Secret History right after I reread this, because I was like, oh,
Yes.
so that one did this, because there's the two different spirits that you're seeing running around.
And technically a third, because the one that actually...
Three?
Well, no, because technically,
it was-
because the one that actually stabs him, while it's technically preservation, it's Kelsier
Who's making him do it?
who's
Yeah.
making him do it. Because preservation couldn't do that of his own. That's so against his
But he's
nature.
like, no, you're gonna do it.
Well, and then the one that tried to attack him while they were traveling up to the mountains, that was Ruin, correct?
Yeah, that was Ruin.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, because Kelsier
posing his preservation, trying to
make her not trust
Spirit.
him.
Yeah, because we have that wave where Kelsier flies out, sees it just hovering there over Ellen, and he's like...
Like waiting and waiting,
Yeah,
and
waiting.
he's like, when's she gonna come in?
And then she comes in, then does it, and he's like, what? Why would you do that? That doesn't make sense.
right.
He calls
Okay,
him Fuzzy too. That's the cute part.
Fuzz.
Oh,
Fuzz.
Yeah, we'll get into more detail of that later, but no. But
Okay,
yeah.
so do you have something specific to talk about what we're talking about, or do you want it?
No, this is fine because
I was getting ready to move. So I think at this point it might be a good idea to look at more of the Cosmere aspect of this book and some of Scadrial's origins. Some of this is revealed more in the next book and Word of Brandon, but I think it's really important in this book just because it gives us sort of an idea of what's going on, what's motivating stuff going on behind the scenes and stuff. Yeah. So the Cosmere itself, we've talked about Ruin and Preservation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Scadrial didn't exist before Ruin and Preservation. I've heard some discussions talking about, they found this planet and they came. No, Ruin and Preservation worked together. They looked for an open space where there was no planet.
Yeah, there's no other planet in the entire solar system.
Mm-hmm. There's
no moon.
Right.
It's just the planet around a star.
And so if you look at Cosmere Unbounded, or
Arcanum Unbounded.
Arcanum Unbounded. Yeah. If you look at it, Chris's notes on Scadrial are really fascinating because essentially what happened is Ruin and Preservation were heading off and they decided to work together to create a planet. And for that reason, Scadrial is actually very similar to Yolen, which is where everyone else came from. And Yolen, of course, is almost an analog of Earth. So when they say years, it's pretty accurate to our times on other worlds.
Well, except for Scadrial moving about throughout the cosmos.
Yep, and that's what frustrates the
scholars.
The scholars the most, because there's no way to get a clear picture of just how old things are, because the stars essentially moved. Because when the planet was shifted by the Lord Ruler, everything around them, the reference point changed. Mm-hmm. The length of a year changed. The length of a day changed. Everything is different. The physical makeup of humanity changed. And so it's really hard to get a clear picture of things, because when the world is moving itself, suddenly nothing is constant. And so
the thing that's interesting about Well of Ascension regarding all this stuff is that this is, in most respects, I would say Well of Ascension is essentially the first real Cosmere book, because it's the first one that starts to deal with the powers of the gods themselves. We see the evidence of it in the other two books, Elantris in particular, but this is the one where it matters, because all of this is the result of Ruin and Preservation's deal that they made with one another.
Right.
And from it,
which
everything
was then broken.
Yeah, and that's where everything comes from in this plot. and it's where we get our first hint of how tied to their natures both of them are. The fact that they needed one another in order to create this planet, because Ruin wants to destroy everything, but he can't destroy it unless it's created first. And Preservation wants a planet to create, but can't do it because his power is only to preserve. He needs the powers of change. His
power is stagnation.
Yeah, he needs the power of chaos in order to help breathe it into life.
One interjection. There actually are other planets in the Scadrian system.
Oh, there are? I thought it was
this is no relevant planets, right?
Well, no. Essentially what it is think of it as our solar system if there were no planets inside of the asteroid belt. Because there are a couple others. If you look at the illustration...
Okay. For some reason I thought... Okay.
Yeah, so there are a couple others. But there was a huge gap between those planets and the sun. And so Ruin and Preservation show up and they say, hey, look, we've got room to... We've got a little sandbox we can play in. And so they make this world, and then they work together to create humanity as well, basing them. So that's one of the other things that's interesting, is that humanity on Scadrial was created entirely by these two shards. And then tweaked by Preservation, because he has altered the deal, pray he doesn't alter it further.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's I found it so interesting the first time I read it, and for me it's tough to separate them, because the first time I read it was like both books were out, and it's just I read that and it's like, well,
just keep reading.
Well, I couldn't. I was actually on holiday break, and I was borrowing Bill's books, and I was out of town, and I'd finished it far sooner than I had planned. And I'm just like, well, guess I gotta go buy a book now, because I can't wait a week. Am I insane? Come on. I gotta find out where this goes.
Okay, so the orbit of Scadrial shifted significantly during the Lord Ruler's ascension, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what else did he do during his ascension? Because, there were several different stages to what he did. So I forget, why did he originally move the orbit?
But isn't this more for the next book?
Is it?
I mean, yeah, because that's when Vin takes the power, and we get the inklings of how this actually works.
Yeah, we can talk
about
it.
I don't remember rereading this at all.
That's true. Okay.
Yeah. But
so he had a plan.
Yeah, but that's the other thing. That's the other big winner of this book. Like, we talk about how Kelsier casts a big shadow. The Lord Ruler comes out, frankly, smelling like roses compared to the last book. Because you find out, oh, wow, when he said you would regret, kicking me out.
Like, it was a year away, and then...
Like, it was that close. And how frustrated must he have been that he's just like, I was this close to buying you guys another freaking millennia, and this is how you repay me?
You stabbed me.
Yeah. But you find out that, man, okay, he had plans, and it was all on purpose, and it wasn't just because he's just this cruel person.
Right.
It was. Don't get me wrong, he was a cruel person. We saw how he treated Alendi, but once you know all the manipulations that were going into everything, you understand, yeah, he may hate Alendi just because he's from Haranium, but Alendi's a problem. And he's the same problem Vin is, because they're going to get the world destroyed with their idyllic way of looking at things.
Right.
I'm reminded of the opening of Half-Life 2. The right man in the wrong place can make all the difference in the world. Ooh. And that's what Ruin has been slowly manipulating everything to try and do. First it was Quan. That failed. Or not Quan, Lendi. That failed because of Quan.
Right.
The other thing that's interesting about Quan is the fact that he didn't take the deal that the Lord Ruler offers. And that's what we learn through this whole thing.
Right. Well, We learned that more in the third book.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry. This is what happens when you read it all in a row.
Mm-hmm. And so, but
where in the first time you guys were reading in Quan's writings, where was the first time you noticed something changed?
I don't think I did.
Okay.
I have the reading too fast problem, so like I'll realize things later.
For
For
me, the one that stood out was, there were two that I'm like, the first one was when they changed the title of the announcer to the what was the
first witness, Holy First Witness.
Yeah, Holy First. The announcer. I'm like, pretty sure that was different. Fairly certain that was different.
And I didn't pick up on.
Well, I thought I had found, like, is that a printing error? And then the second time is when because he talked about how Alendi was short, even though he seemed to. I'm like, no, he was tall. It said he was tall. I know it said he was tall. What's going on? I don't even know anymore. This book is on paper, not metal. That's why you can only trust.
You didn't even realize could be changed. So.
Yeah, it's just. No, that's why you gotta listen to the audiobooks. I think because it's on a hard drive, it's technically made out of silicate, it's technically metal. I think it's the only thing you can trust.
Isn't that essentially a metal mind?
No, because I didn't store it with Ruin's power. I stored it with magnetism.
Which is Ruin's power.
I don't think that's true.
Pretty sure.
Oh, okay. Well, I was unsure, but then you offered that counterpoint. And
indeed.
Now I'm flummoxed.
This book just makes me doubt. I'm like, wait, who do I trust? What do I trust? I don't know.
But that's what's really... So this, like, the first book with the chapter, not prologues, what's the word I'm looking... Headings. Like, it was cool, because...
Epigrams?
Epigrams, that's the word I'm looking for. Like, it was cool, because we got to see a slight view into this past world. This one, they mattered. Mm-hmm. They mattered so much, and...
Well, in the first one, they mattered, too.
Yeah, they mattered, but they didn't matter the same way these ones did. Like, if you were paying attention to the epigrams versus what they're reading in the chapters, that's your first inklings that he's changing things.
Except that I think it's sort of the same thing in the first one. If you start paying attention, and you realize this is written by... who we think is the Lord Ruler, and then you find out, so you start wondering, what led to this person becoming this person.
Yeah, what sparked that drastic change?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and so it's just another interesting, like, Brandon's epigrams, like, those are a whole other story unto themselves, and I love it.
Yeah. It's one of the coolest things, and because he did it in these books, which are fairly early on in his career, it puts you on your toes the rest of his career.
Yeah,
and that's what's so cool.
You never quite know what to expect.
Well, and now it's to the point where Brandon knows we know that he knows that we know, and so who knows what he's putting into these things?
There's too much knowing.
So much. Well,
and Brandon has said that he enjoys watching people scurry around with crackpot theories and figuring stuff out. Like, part of me wonders if there are crackpot theories that people have put forward that he's sat back and he's like, that's a good idea. Yeah, let's put that one in.
I like that one.
There's a trope for that, and some writers do actually do that, because a lot of times, because Brandon has admitted that some of the stuff he put into the books, like, he didn't have it all worked out yet. Especially true of Elantris, but some of the earlier Mistborn stuff he had to figure out later how it fit in, and he had to tweak it. And the thing about fans is Brandon doesn't have the time to sit there and figure out how this all fits together. Like, he needs to write. And
that's why he has this whole team.
Yeah, and so he has
a person who is specifically in charge of making sure that the timelines line up.
Yeah, and so fans are an amazing resource, because we will obsess over things that the writer doesn't have time for. This isn't Brandon, but Stephen King has a similar issue. Except Brandon's a planner, so Brandon's much more on top of it. Stephen King writes by the seat of his pants and tries to remember things. Right. And he has admitted he goes to his own wiki that his fans have created for him to try and remember stuff because he doesn't remember.
The Brothers Chaps who did Homestar Runner did the same thing. Is because there's a Homestar wiki and they would go and read it, and so a lot of because there's a lot of callback references throughout those cartoons, and that's where they would find out about them. They say, okay, what was this? Where was this? How did this go? And so they'll go and they'll check the wiki. So Brandon, on the other hand, has a wiki, his own personal wiki that he's created, which I'm fairly certain if the fans got their hands on that, the world would explode.
No good will come of it.
No, he said it originally started off as just a binder when he was writing at the front desk of the hotel, and then eventually he got an open source wiki program and just started building from there, and now there's somebody in charge of keeping that up as well. So,
man, if only we can find the domain name.
Well, I think it's actually not an online wiki. I think it's just a program, like a locally stored.
No, but then that doesn't
would get hacked.
Yeah, exactly. And so, okay, so before we, I think we're getting ready to start wrapping up, but before we do, there is a line that I just absolutely love that I kind of want to discuss. It's when Vin sees Ellen for the first time after the battle.
Oh, that's right.
And she says, I think I did something bad. And he just sort of looks at her and he's like, what's that? She says, I made you emperor. And of course, and his response is, I know, and I accept. Which really right there shows the growth of Ellen across the whole book. Because at the first, he's sort of this hesitant king who doesn't want to take too much power. And at the end, he's just like, you know what? Somebody's got to take charge. Right now, I'm going to do it. So,
and he's like, every other selection out there, not so great. So, I mean, I'm not perfect, but I'm the better option.
The fact that Vin forces people one by one to General Zod-style kneel.
Well, and again, the way she does it with Set.
That's really good.
She's just like, he said, how would Ellen feel about you doing it this way? And she just basically gives him
a look,
don't even try. You aren't half the man as Ellen, and you know it. And he just sort of, that's true.
That's true.
Get me off this horse so I can swear fealty. But the funny thing is, the line, I made you emperor, he changed that. So during the final editing, he changed the actual end of the book because he had to change the order, how to get Hoyd in where he was supposed to be at the right time and all that stuff. Yeah. And one of the things that he changed was this line. Because originally the line was, I think I did something bad, I made you emperor. The original line was, I think I did something bad, I conquered the world. And it just, like...
That line makes me happy, too.
I love that line, but I do think that the new one probably works better. But it's just,
it's also true. It's also truer, because they hadn't conquered the world.
Right. They conquered
the known world for them, yeah.
Which, that, to be fair, that's not really anything to sneeze at. But.
No.
Yeah.
No. Oh, so something that I just want to have a brief discussion before the end. When I finished the book and Ellen was a Mistborn, I personally felt very like, it's a bit Deus Ex Machina, which actually literally is true because it was God stuff. But it just, I don't know. For me, it bugged me. And I was wondering if you guys had a similar, like, this feels contrived. Like, at that moment. Like, it clearly isn't.
It felt a little... Well, especially because I knew at that point that Ellen was kind of Brandon's surrogate character. And so it felt kind of Marty Stu.
I thought it was Gary Stu.
I've heard Gary Stu, I've heard Marty Stu, I've heard whatever.
Okay. I was just wondering if it was just me.
I just thought it was cool, but I also... I don't know.
That said, the way that he handled... Yeah, the way that he handled it at the very beginning or of the next book, where it's like he has this strong power, but he doesn't have the finesse, and he feels he's not fully comfortable with it, made more sense.
Oh, yeah. It's something that he clearly fixed, but for me, it was one of the first times Brandon did something, and I'm like, I don't know, Brandon. I don't know.
It's also sort of like in Chuck. At one point, the intersect changes and Chuck learns kung fu, and I remember thinking, this is going to be dumb. And then in the next season, he knows kung fu, but it doesn't work the way that he expects it to at all. And so he still continues the awkwardness. It continues the character. It's not just, and suddenly now you have an uber powerful Ha. It's just, it's the same guy. And
but so with power.
He's still the same guy, but with power. Yes, Lion King reference.
So one other scene that I'm looking through my notes now, and that I really liked was when Vin was trying to figure out what was going on with the myth and the legend behind the Hero of Ages, and how she did her notes is like, Elaine would just have like a stack of books, and he would just kind of remember things and make notes, and she just would like tear out pages and just put them in piles by topic, and she had it all over the floor. And like even there's one time that Orosaur/Tensoon is like, your desk is over there, and she's like, I know.
She sits on the floor and she has more space.
And she's writing, and whatever else. And I think that she shows her notes to Seiza, and he's like, "You wrote this?" And she's like, "Why does everyone say that?" Because apparently she has really nice handwriting. And everybody's like, "But you don't."
You don't.
And not only that, she has scholarly insights.
Mm-hmm. And he's there going, "You're not going the same route, but it makes sense still, and your instincts are usually spot on."
The thing that I loved about that entire scene is when Elend walks in.
And he's like, "You're studying!"
Yes, it was so...
so happy and so proud.
I just love that. It's just like, as if I couldn't love you more. Holy cow. This is exactly my fantasy.
Talk nerdy to me.
The two of us studying.
Together.
It's just like, you start to play, Jasmine and Aladdin music, and except, they don't go anywhere. It's just a bunch of books.
Oh,
I do remember liking that one. I thought it was a cute little bit there.
Yep, no, that is
it was fun to see that development in Ben, how she had always grown up thinking like it's not worth it to write or to read or whatever, and Reen apparently had gotten frustrated with her studying, and so he's like, because he got her to write to a certain point, and he got tired of all of her practicing and the resources it took to let her practice, and so he just didn't let her practice beyond that.
Because she would very passive aggressively fight him on it.
Yeah, which I did with my piano practicing when I was a kid. I did not want to take piano lessons because my mom was like, "You're going to take piano lessons," and I'm like, "I don't want to," but she made me anyway. And so I was told by my piano teacher, who was a nice lady that I knew personally, that I could hit the keys a little softer. And that was because I was banging on the keys because I was angry at being there.
How old were you?
And I was like 10, 11, 12, something like that. So I was old enough to know that,
you were Vin age.
I wasn't Vin, not quite.
No, but like I imagine when she's moving around with Reen, that's about her age.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, so just you can make me do it, but I'm not going to be happy about it. My brother was taking lessons.
You can cage my body, but not my spirit.
I don't want to be here. As soon as that 15 minutes is up, I am gone from this stool. So, yeah. But it just reminded me of that.
Oh, man. All right, well, I think we should start wrapping up right now. So,
okay.
Let's see. So, we mentioned before that, if you want to help support us, you can go to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. The show is right now entirely funded by patron support and then our own pockets. So by becoming a patron, you get access to bonus content like the 6-7, which is a collection of 7 pieces of content that we find each week and we want to share with you. You also get early access and, as we mentioned earlier, access to our Discord channel, where you can continue the discussion, talk about the Cosmere with other people who listen to the podcast, as well as the hosts. And most importantly, you're just helping us build the show. With the help of our patrons, we're able to expand the show to record more frequent episodes, and we're hopefully going to be able to improve the recording quality by getting better microphones and other equipment. Each of us, of course, has our own special side projects that we're working on. Amy, when you're not here, where can we find you? What are you?
I'm doing weird Instagram photos and working on costumes. I realized that I posted in the Instagram feed that I was going to talk about the Jello, and I didn't talk about the Jello. So anyway, so I run the Instagram feed. And I was trying to figure out how to do a Condra/Mystery thing, and so I was like, oh well, maybe. And I think you helped me figure this out, Bill. And I was like, oh, maybe I can put it in Jello and it'll look like that, and it did not look right.
It didn't work.
It looked so it looked horrific. I was like, this is not looking.
Misfits look horrific. So.
I know, but it wasn't. I could only get like dinosaurs, and I was like, they're not going to look right for a Mystery. And like so like the dinosaurs were like this big, and the human skeleton was like this big, and I'm like, that's not going to work. So I did do the human skeleton in the Jello, and then I was like, this just looks weird. And then I picked all the Jello off, and I was like, and that looks better. So anyway, but I'm also working out costumes as well. I'm starting on, so I have a friend who's going to cut out Mistwraith armor for the fingers for me. So that'll be cool. And I've actually printed out the entire Facetin rifle, but then I realized that the top does not actually follow the contours that it should, so I have to reprint and redesign parts of it. So that's going to be fun.
Oh,
but it's doable. I want to enter a contest with eventually, so I want it to look perfect. So it means I have to redo it. But my easier costume that I'm also starting on is Lady Tremaine from Cinderella. It's the Wicked Stepmother.
What type of gun does she use?
What?
What type of gun does she use?
She uses a cane and a mean cat. That's her gun.
Does the cane like fire the mean cat across the distance?
Our version of Cinderella is a lot stranger, but frankly better.
I'd watch it.
Anyway.
All right, so where can we find your stuff?
That's right. I'm on Facebook and Instagram as well as Twitter under Coincidence Cosplay or Coincidence Cosp on Twitter because it's too long. And that's where I'm at usually.
Awesome. And Jordan, what about you? Where can we find you?
You can find me at twitch.tv/splicestream. That's Splice Stream. You can easily see it because it rhymes with ice cream, and that's fun. Because rhyming clearly makes it correct. And the other thing is I was just looking for people to follow. I'm going to be starting my Amiibo League. That's a Smash League where people give me 2 Amiibos. They form a team. We have them fight one another, and they derp around, and it's wonderful. But if you follow my channel, you can also show up as one of my soldiers in my XCOM playthroughs I do every Saturday for Saturday Morning XCOM. So see you all then.
Amiibo League is essentially cruelty-free cockfighting.
Yeah.
So.
Digital cockfighting, as I've described it.
Indeed. As for myself, when I'm not here, I am writing board game reviews over at the Innkeeper's Table. You can find that at innkeeperstable.com. You can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All of those accounts are at Innkeeper's Table. I'm currently working on a review of the game Takenoko, which is about an adorable little panda that eats bamboo and frustrates a gardener who's trying to grow said bamboo.
It's the most adorable game ever, isn't it?
It looks cute.
It's really adorable and I think it wins many top 10 lists of cutest game in the world. And yes, those are real top 10 lists.
It's the internet. If you thought of it, it exists.
It's there.
So, to our listeners, if you've enjoyed the show, we would love it if you would go to iTunes and give us a 5-star review. That is probably the best way that you can help support the show right now because it boosts our ratings and makes it so other people can find us more easily. And also make sure to share the podcast with your friends. Tell them about us, particularly those who are fans of Brandon Sanderson. Before we disappear, do any of y'all have any final thoughts on Mistborn, on the Well of Ascension, or Brandon Sanderson, the Cosmere? Anything we've talked about right now?
I'm excited to talk about the next book because it's obviously the culmination of everything, but it's also when we finally get to have the fun of who did we let out of the people.
I'm excited next time because I really want to take a look into Tensoon, his perspective on chapters. Tensoon, this time reading through, he was an interesting character the first time I read. This time reading through, I remember thinking, this is just a cool character because, again, he makes the hard choices, but he also faces up to his punishments. And some of the actions that he takes, he's
especially in the fight with Zane when he gives her a big hint and says, no, you need to do the thing so I can help you take out Zane. Well,
that and then the attack on the assembly, I think, is where Like
Yeah.
he actually attacks a human.
Oh,
The
that's
first
right. So they don't hurt her.
Which of course sparks some revealing discussions later on in the book because that's where she starts to learn more about the Kandra,
Mhm.
more than he ever intended to share. So I'm really excited to talk more about Tensoon.
Mhm.
In addition to the live episodes of our show that we stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time, listeners can also find our videos on YouTube or the audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and just about any other service that has podcasts by doing a search for Cosmere Studies. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and eventually we're hopefully going to have a Facebook profile soon by searching for the profile at Cosmere Studies. We want to hear from you, so please tell us what you think of the show, tell us about your favorite moments in the books, and of course we'd love to hear any theories you have about what's going on at the Cosmere. You can email us at cosmerestudies@gmail.com, as well as reaching out in any of our social media profiles or on YouTube. At the end, and that wraps up another episode of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. On behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, thanks for listening. And remember, there's always another secret.